Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection, and it's January again, so you know what that means. Time to talk about last year. Now, as everyone in as pretty much all of us in some kind of entertainment field on YouTube is doing right now, yeah, I'm going to do well, this is one of the few lists of last year I'll be doing. So, as you can tell from the title, we're here. This is my top 10 comics of the last year. I'm going to actually start with the honorable mentions. These are the books that I really, really liked, and they were actually pretty close to making the list. It's just that they would, and then I'd remember, oh yeah, but what about that? And then I'd write the entire list because, yeah. Anyway, honestly, absolute carnage. Okay, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions, I got into comics in the '90s. In fact, some of the first Spider-Man related comic books I ever owned were a good chunk of the Maximum Carnage run. I think I had about, I don't know, half of the involved issues. But yeah. So now one of the first graphic novels I ever bought was the Spider-Man Carnage graphic novel, which is the first appearance of Carnage. Hell, Carnage is probably one of the few comic book characters I can actually draw well. Relatively speaking, that is. That is to, to imply that I could draw something well. Anywho. But, so yeah, I've always liked Carnage. I have appreciated Venom to varying degrees over the years, and to be perfectly honest, Absolute Carnage is when Eddie finally grew on me and said, okay, I can truly accept him as a hero in his own thing. I didn't have a problem with him as a hero within a larger group, but yeah, in his own thing, like, I really, I'm not that interested. But actually, it's pretty neat. So yeah, I'm in. Plus, it was just really cool to see all the past symbiote stories revisited. I mean everything. I think Symbiote Spider-Man got hit up. Carnage USA, the original Venom Lethal Protector miniseries, Venom, yeah, so on and so forth. And it looks like it's finally saw the end of Carnage, and probably gave us our next big, humongous, cosmic level bad guy in the form of Null. Next up, Domino Hot Shots. It was dumb, it was fun, and it was neat. It was really neat to see Domino interacting with certain characters, especially Black Widow. Also, I really wish that Marvel would just ask Gail Simone to start writing Deadpool again. I really do, because the moments that he had in the book, as well as in Domino's previous ongoing series from last year, were just so good. Next up, we got Punisher Kill Crew. So Punisher Kill Crew was an Aftermath comic book. Basically, it was the continuation of the Punisher's War of the Realms story. In the Punisher War of the Realms miniseries, it begins with Punisher fighting some frost giants in New York, and sadly, a family got caught in the crossfire. The wife and child died. Husband slash father was injured. And so, and Punisher promised him, I will get that son of a bitch. You have my word. I'll put him down. Well, after the War of the Realms was over, Frank was talking to the guy and said, yeah, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to be, traversing the however many realms there are, but yeah, I'm going after him. And dude says, well, before you go, you should meet there's people you should meet. War orphans. Kids whose parents were killed during the War of the Realms by various creatures of the Ten Realms. And Frank had a brilliant idea. Basically had the kids, hey, draw what killed your parents for me. And then he borrowed one of Thor's goats, took a bit of the Black Bifrost, hitched the goat to his van, and used the Black Bifrost to traverse the Ten Realms, picking up allies including the Black Knight, Juggernaut, and, of all people, Foggy Nelson, attorney at law, along the way. And it was just really... the bulk of it is just really dumb fun of, oh, look, the Punisher killed a bunch of Asgardian-related bat monsters. In ways that, it's like, Thor's been hitting this thing with a hammer for 20 years, and the Punisher comes in, fires a rocket at it, and it's dead. Maybe Thor needs a rocket launcher. Okay, not really, but yeah. But, well, unless... But it was really big, dumb fun. But what really kind of elevated to the point where I was considering it for this list was the ending. After he's going through, he's been looting the gems and whatnot from the various dead bodies, and Foggy basically takes the gems. Like, okay, so what we'll do is we'll sell the gems and start a trust fund for these kids. And then there's also what happens, kind of the very end of it, which deals with, Frank and the man he initially made the promise to. And, it's one of those, Punisher is a nigh unrepentant murderer. But there is a good person in there somewhere. He just keeps that good person inside of him locked away when he's, as he puts it, working. So, yeah. Next up, also going with Punisher again, Matt Rosenberg's run on the book, and I might actually kind of be cheating a little by including this because I think that run actually started in 2018, but the massive bulk of it was released in this past year. So I'm going to just say it counts for an honorable mention, not being added to the list, and one, it was fun. Especially Frank teaming up because, well, they're not going to go away with a team handpicked by Black Widow, consisting of her, Moon Knight, Night Thrasher, Ghost Rider, and Rachel Cole Alves. So yeah, I seriously hope that Matt Rosenberg gets to sometime in the very near future write Moon Knight. I think that would make for quite the trip. Lastly, honorable mentions: Avengers: No Road Home. So I've made no secret I was not the biggest fan of No Surrender. I thought it was overly long, padded, and just it dragged. It went on longer than I think it really needed to. No Road Home actually worked just right. Plus, it set the stage for Conan being in the Marvel Universe, which was kind of neat, actually, and it has proven to be very neat. So now the actual list, the top 10 comics of 2019, in my opinion. Now, a few things first. The list only includes books from Marvel and DC. Not because I have anything against other publishers. It's just I'm really not reading books from other publishers because I can only afford so many comic books. Both in terms of storage space and, well, buying new books every month, every week. That said, I will probably be soon-ish trying to get the first few issues of James Tynion IV's Something is Killing the Children. Because that looks really good. Anywho, on to the list. Coming in at number 10, we have the Soska Sisters' Black Widow No Restraints play. So, I'll be honest, I was super looking forward to it. And this would probably be higher up on the list, except for the fact that it ended. I mean, there's a conclusion, and it's a conclusion that works. But I was under the impression that the title was going to be an ongoing instead of a 5-issue miniseries. And it was a good 5-issue miniseries. Damn good. God, I want to see more of the Soska Sisters writing Black Widow. But I also presume that they told one story and then they probably had other stuff they had to work on. So after all, they're not primarily comic books, they're primarily screenwriters. So, or I think screenwriters and directors. I know that they at least wrote a remake of the David Cronenberg film Rabid this past year, which is very well regarded. And honestly, I'm all for watching more stuff they've written because, man, that was a great Black Widow story that they wrote. All right, next up we've got Matt Rosenberg's run on Uncanny X-Men, which lasted from which covered issues 11 through all the way through 22. And it was the aftermath of the X-Men Disassembled weekly story, wherein the X-Men got killed off seemingly got killed off by X-Men with some help from Legion. Yeah, it was a thing. I wasn't the biggest fan of the story. Again, it felt there were points where it did feel kind of padded. 11 through 22, however, had it picked up in the aftermath of all this with the X-Men are dead, so what now? Well, not all the X-Men were dead apparently. Cyclops, who everyone thought was dead at that point, wasn't. And so him, Wolverine, who had recently also come back from the dead, and Cyclops and Wolverine basically tracked down additional mutants and recruited them, and made their own X-Men, and basically said, okay, we're gonna, there are still enemies of the X-Men out there. We need to take them down. We need to put them down, and in the end, the rest of the X-Men came back, but they still had a decent amount of casualties, including some of my favorite members of the team, including Havoc, Multiple Man, Strong Guy. Wolfsbane was Wolfsbane's death was, yeah. Anyway, it was a good run, and I really liked it. It set the stage. It was a nice cap off to things before House of X and Powers of 10. Anyways, at number 8 we've got Avengers number 26, which features the origin of Starbrand. Well, the Starbrand from 1 million BC. So a couple years ago in the Marvel Legacy one shot, the Avengers of 1 million BC were introduced, including Odin, the first Black Panther, the first Iron Fist, Agamotto, as in the Eye of Agamotto, the first Ghost Rider, Starbrand, and various others. Actually, I think it might all be everyone. But throughout Jason Aaron's run on Avengers, we've been getting one-shots showing the origins of some of these characters, including we've seen Ghost Rider, we've seen Iron Fist, and now we've also seen Starbrand, which was actually really well done, and it was basically to tell the history of the Starbrand and set the stage for the new Starbrand centered story arc. Also, we had a T-Rex with the Starbrand in the issue. How cool is that? Next up, number 7, we got Silver Surfer Black. Donny Cates' Silver Surfer Black was honestly a comic I was probably going to skip until I read the first issue and saw that Null was involved. Oh, so this is probably going to at least tangentially relate to Absolute Carnage. Guess I'm gonna have to read it. But it was such a good book, and nice little spin-off from the first few issues of Cates' Guardians of the Galaxy run, wherein most of the cosmic heroes got sucked into some vortex, and yeah, stuff happened. None of it good. But Silver Surfer Black was just so good. It's such a great tale dealing with this, largely dealing with Silver Surfer in the time before, during the Silver Surfer as he is now, being flung back to the early days of this current universe. He almost destroyed. There's a point where he actually tries to kill Galactus while he's basically, still incubating and transitioning from being Galen of Ta to Galactus. But the Watcher has to say, no. You're not allowed to do that. Sorry. It's too important that he live. Even with the fact he's going to kill untold trillions. If not more, to be perfectly honest. But, it was such a great book. And I love the fact that everyone is keeping... Every writer that's handling the Surfer since is actually acknowledging that, something happened to the Surfer. He is changed. Admittedly, that's only been a few writers, but still. Next up, we've got Spider-Man Life Story. So I've long been a Spider-Man fan. Oh, yes. To be fair, I don't regularly read Spider-Man comic books anymore. Well, The Amazing Spider-Man anymore. Or Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Or any other Earth 616 based Spider-Man comic. Usually. Because of a specific story that I felt was a betrayal of the character. So, Spider-Man Life Story, however, I felt was probably one of the most interesting comic books, and it's just bold concept. And to be fair, I'd really love to see... I think that 6 issues might actually not be enough. I think maybe it kind of needs to be, at least a miniseries for each decade. But hell, this is probably the kind of thing that I think Marvel could have done as a weekly book, with 50, 52 issues covering a span of from 1962 to 2019, covering 57 years. I think it could be done, but it was such a bold idea with the idea with having, what if Spider-Man had been aging in real time as opposed to the sliding time scale that Marvel employs, where it's like, Peter Parker is in his 30s, and he's been Spider-Man for close to maybe 20 years. But yeah, great book, and I'd love to see more done with the universe in general. I'd love to see more. I'd love to see it revisited and see more. See it. I mean, there are plot points that get brought up throughout, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I think could have been focused on, and like I said, in each decade. Next up, we've got Deceased. So, I'm a big fan of zombie fiction. Romero's zombie movies, the Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead, The Walking Dead, and so on, so forth. And God, about around 15 years or so ago, kind of in the height of the zombie craze, Marvel had this brilliant idea. What if we did a zombie book? Not just, a throwaway story where, not just a story where we have, a bunch of Marvel heroes fighting zombies. No, I mean, zombified versions of Marvel heroes. And so the seed of this began in a story arc in Ultimate Fantastic Four, wherein Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe, now known as the Maker, contacts an older Reed Richards from a parallel universe, seemingly from Earth 616. And they apparently they've been talking via this communication device, and oh hey, yeah, this is mine and Sue's son, Franklin. Oh wow, okay. And then and apparently Reed's like, hey, it would be great to meet another Reed Richard, another me. Like, yeah, it would. That would be. We could probably compare notes on some of the problems facing our relative Earths, and come up with solutions together. And so they build this. They build these portal devices, and Reed goes through, and he's been duped. It turns out the whole idea was for Zombie Reed to get Ultimate Reed to make a portal, so that Zombie Reed could and his fellow zombies could traverse it. And then Ultimate Reed ends up having to on the run from the rest of the Marvel's zombies, and the story would prove so popular that Marvel said, "Hey, let's actually just do something focusing on the zombies." And so they did these. The way the Marvel zombies were done was they were very tongue-in-cheek. They still had their intellects to a degree, but they also had the hunger. And so, yeah, you had a lot of just off-color jokes about these heroes who've now thoroughly become monsters. And yeah, and there are points where I remember where zombie Spider-Man, he ate something, and then so he really calmed down. And he's like, "Oh God, what did I do?" Remembering that he ate Aunt May and MJ. Or additional things like Zombie Cap fighting Zombie Red Skull, who just said screw it and ripped and yanked out Zombie Cap's brain. Galactus came to Earth, and the zombies ate him and became cosmically empowered. So yeah, so on and so forth. Now and even with the success of Marvel Zombies, DC was like, no, we're fine not doing it. Besides, we've got our own little line of horror books. Maybe you've heard it. It's called Vertigo. That'll come into play in a later video, a later look back video. Fast forward to 2019. Zombies are, they're a part of pop culture. And is it Tom Taylor? No, Tom Taylor. And DC drops a title called Deceased back in May. And that has a basically zombie apocalypse occurring in the DC universe. And what was so great about this is that unlike Marvel Zombies, this was actually done seriously. The DC zombies, that's really the best thing to call them. First off, they're empowered through the anti-life equation. Then there's the fact that they don't have their personalities. And so they're monsters. And see, Batman succumbing in the second issue. The realization that Martian Manhunter was hiding out, invisible and infected, and attacking survivors of the Fortress of Solitude. The Flash getting infected and trying to run away fast enough to beat the infection. Only that Superman just say, okay, well, yeah, he turned around. I'm going to have to go the opposite way and meet him. Only for Superman to turn because some of Flash's infected blood got into a cut that Superman had, therefore infecting him, and he tried to fly himself into the sun in order to beat it, and he couldn't. And it was just it was so good and heart wrenching, and just there's actually going to be a follow-up miniseries this year, focusing on a lot of the villains that weren't covered. So that's great. Plus, every issue had two different variant covers. One was a zombie variant, just oh hey, here's a random DC character as a zombie. The others were homages to horror movies. For example, Deceased #4 had a cover that was very clearly a nod based on the poster of the original Final Destination. I think issue 6 had one that was a nod to the movie Critters, so on and so forth. But yeah, and they're continuing that same thing with the second miniseries. Alright, so next up we've got one of this year's event books. And I mean, yeah, we mentioned one in the honorable mentions, but this one actually makes the big list. War of the Realms from Marvel. So, okay, I'm going to get this out of the way right off the bat. Yes, I like Thor as an Avenger. Now, that said, Donny Cates' run on the fact of Donny Cates being involved on Thor, and the fact that it looked like it was going to spin out of other things that Cates has written recently, kind of got me to pick up the new Thor title. But I didn't read any of Jason Aaron's run, as good as it supposedly is. I didn't read a single issue of it. I need to. I'll probably try and get the omnibus or some shit. I don't know. Anyway, what I loved about War of the Realms is the fact that it was fast. Yeah, it's 6 issues over 3 months that shipped on time, and they were longer than normal comics, and yet they were tight, well written. I remember watching a review of the first issue on a fellow comic YouTuber's channel, and he said that the first issue pretty much ends where at a point that would be the end of like the 3rd or 4th issue of most other event books. The first issue ended with the assorted Malekith and his forces coming to Earth in mass. It was like, yeah, we're here, bitches. Let's do this. And actually having, one of the first big fights between Malekith's forces and our heroes, which did not go that well for the heroes. Loki got frickin' eaten. He got eaten by his father, Lo-Fei. And that would come into play later as well. But yeah, and I mean, it wrapped up a lot of the story really well. A lot of Jason Aaron's run perfectly, including the arc that Thor Odinson himself has been on, as well as continuing, kind of being the end the end of the Thor chapter of Jane Foster's life, and putting her, basically putting her on the road to her next journey, where she's now the Valkyrie, as the Valkyries are all dead. But yeah, it was a really good story, and actually had a lot of really strong tie-ins. I mean, I mentioned Absolute Carnage and how it was neat that it, had mentions of every single symbiote story ever, pretty much. But a lot of those one-shots really weren't all that necessary. I mean, some of them were really good. And, I could probably deal with, I don't know, half of them being just turned into subplots of the primary series. Anyway, next up, we got yet another DC book, Harleen. So this year, DC unveiled its Black Label imprint, which is basically the superhero version of Vertigo. And also, I might add, the replacement for Vertigo. As most of DC's mature readers' books will be published through the Black Label imprint. But yeah, Harleen had an interesting look just from the previews. And so I figured, I'll try this out, I don't like the size of it. I'll be completely honest. I do not like the larger size, which is apparently becoming largely a standard thing with the superhero fare from Black Label. But the story was really good, and I honestly, it had a similar vibe to me as the Joker's origin portions of Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. I'm not going to say that Stjepan Sejic was trying to emulate that, but it really did kind of the feel was there. It was like, I was definitely getting the feeling that, okay, this is, And I would not be surprised if in the next 10, 15 years, elements of the Harleen miniseries get worked into Harley Quinn's mainstream origin. And I would be quite happy with that. Anyway, next up, yet another DC book. Not the first Black Label book, but definitely one of the bigger ones. Batman: Last Night on Earth. So, Last Night on Earth is the last Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo Batman story. The two have been working on Batman on and off since the beginning of the New 52. They were the creative team on the New 52 Batman, and so they ended up basically creating so much of the stuff so much material during that, the Court of Owls, so on, so forth. But yeah, Last Night on Earth takes place, in the future. In fact, the first issue is it began feeling very much like some of the, it honestly began feeling like one of the common Batman stories. Bruce Wayne wakes up in a in Arkham Asylum, and told that he's been a patient there since he was 8 years old. And oh yeah, there are various staff members who look very similar to various Bat villains. Also other patients. And he sadly, because of the tragedy he went through, he's very violent and has a tendency to attack them often. But he realizes it's an illusion. But we find out he's not Bruce Wayne. He's a clone. A contingency plan that Batman had. The idea being there will always be a Batman. And so he gets loose from the illusion, gets to the surface, which is desolate, and he finds the Joker's head in a jar, waiting for him, and somehow still alive. And so Batman and the Joker travel the wastelands, running into old allies of Batman's along the way, and some old allies of Joker's too, and also fighting some allies of Joker's, until they make their way back to Gotham and have the big knockdown, drag-out fight with Omega, who was revealed at the end to be none other than actual Bruce Wayne. It was simply believed he was killed, but no, he was turned by Anti-Life. But yeah, it was just so good, and I want to read through all the old New 52 stuff that Snyder and Capullo did, just to get more of them. But anyway, moving on to, of course, the number one, the top entry on the list. And to be perfectly honest, if you haven't guessed what this is yet, you really haven't been paying attention. That's right. Number one on the list is House of X and Powers of 10. But Rock and Roll Spock, that's 2 comic books. How can they... Yeah, shut up. 1, it's my list. 2, yeah, there are 2 series that were connected. You really, to truly get one, you kind of did have to read the other. So, yeah. And it's heralded one of the most interesting eras for the X-Men I think I've ever seen. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Morris era, there's some interesting stuff there, but I think this is just so much more because you've got mutant kind united. You no longer have the various factions. Yeah, sure, there are groups on Krakoa. You've got teams, but they're working together. Hell, a lot of the upcoming titles are showing, characters who are normally X-Men villains working with traditionally heroic members of the X-Men. But the basic idea, so the main story of House of X and Powers of Ten is that Charles Xavier and Magneto decided to come together and create a homeland for all mutant kind on the mutant island of Krakoa. And it turns out that also involved in the decision to do this was Moira McTaggart, who it turns out is a mutant. A mutant who, when she dies, is reborn in the womb with complete recall of her previous lifetimes. That in and of itself is just a kick in the ass. But it acknowledged that, yeah, Moira died in the comics, but no, she faked her death. Basically, Moira faked her death in the comics. But we also get a look at her previous 9 lifetimes through Powers of 10. We also got to see how in lifetime number 10 she brought Charles and Magneto together eventually, and then also Charles and Magneto brought in Sinister, which was something she didn't approve of. And Charles would later go on to bring in to get Forge involved as well. We also saw, in going through the past lifetimes of Moira, we saw a timeline 1,000 years in the future, or 900 years in the future, where artificially evolved humans have basically made a mutant kind of obsolete, and the last few are living in a preserve, while these artificially or evolved humans negotiate with turning their joining the Phalanx. And another one where Moira, where Apocalypse leads the X-Men against the Human Machine Ascendancy. But yeah, it was such a great book, and the Dawn of X titles that have spun out of it so far have all been amazing. I don't remember being this excited about X-Men comic books since I first got into comic books 30 years ago. That's how big a deal this is. So anyway, that's it for now. I'm not going to be doing a top 10 comics of the decade, or I'm not going to be doing a top comics of the decade, because I spent a lot of the last decade not actively reading comic books, to be perfectly honest. So mainly just because I couldn't afford to. But we will be doing a top 10 movies of the year, possibly something along the lines of top 20 or 30 movies of the decade, and also the biggest disappointments of the year. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.